Hey guys, it's time for another episode of From the Crow's Mouth, a video podcast hosted by me, Mitch Cumming, one half and lead singer, lead guitar player, and songwriter of the band Stone Cold Crows. Today we're going to talk to you about the second song on our debut album, Original Sin Part 1, Ghost in a Bottle. I've had that song in my back pocket for nearly a decade now, and it was once actually going to be used for another project that Bryson and I were going to work towards called Ghostlight Tragedy. And that project never really got off the ground, but some of that music has been sitting around waiting to see the light of day, and some of it has actually, with this band, Stone Cold Crows. So I'm really happy about that. And before we get into talking about music today, though, we're going to sip on one of these. This is a John Collins, a delightful treat that allows bourbon to take the center stage in a mixed drink, and we're going to make one and maybe sip on one or two, who knows. But it's a good start to this day, so let's get to it. I'll show you how to make one, and then we'll talk some music. Hey guys, on today's Rock and Roll Bartender segment of From the Crow's Mouth, a video podcast hosted by yours truly, Mitch Cumming, the lead singer, lead guitar player, and creative mastermind behind the band Stone Cold Crows, I'm going to show you how to make a simple yet deliciously refreshing drink today called a John Collins. Now perhaps you've had a Tom Collins before and you'll know that it's made with gin. The real difference in this one is just substituting the gin for bourbon. Now I'm a guy who likes his bourbon. Usually I drink it neat, but it does make a hell of a lot of great cocktails, and this one, while very simple, is quite refreshing. So what you're going to need to make this drink is a Collins glass, actually aptly named for the types of drink. You're going to want it to fill that full of ice. Crushed ice works well in a mixed drink. I know the last drink I showed you guys how to make was a tequila old fashioned, and I specifically mentioned that you want to use bigger cubes. This doesn't matter as it's more of a mixed drink, so use crushed ice cubes if you have. Otherwise, you're going to want bourbon. I'm using Buffalo Trace. I really like that for the price point, one of my personal favorites, but you can choose whichever bourbon you want. You're going to want some lemon juice. If you've got fresh lemons and you can squeeze to get the juice out, even better, but today, just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to be using some store-bought lemon juice. You're going to want simple syrup. You can make this on the stove at home. It's essentially just boiling down sugar into water. But you can check Google for ratios in that, make it as sweet as you like. You essentially just want that sweetness that's going to counteract the sourness and tartness of the lemon. Otherwise, I've got a few garnishes here. I've got cherry, and of course a lemon wheel, and the last touch, the main point of the mix there, is the club soda. You're going to want, as usual, a measurement tool, just to make the drink consistently the same, and a spoon to give it a little stir at the end. So without further ado, let's begin. So you want to start by putting essentially the base ingredients except for the club soda into the glass. Now this recipe calls for 1.5 ounces of bourbon. I'm more of a 2 ounce of bourbon kind of guy, so I'm going to do that, make mine a little stronger. But you can do 1.5 ounces if you want. This recipe we're going to do 2. Okay, bourbon, take the stage. Then you're going to want 1 ounce of lemon juice. Just put it into the glass over top of the ice. As you can see already with the ice in there and the 3 ounces, the glass is already half full. So while it looks like it's a pretty potent mixed drink, the soda is really just for fizz. Majority of the flavor is what's coming out right now here with the simple syrup. And we're going to do just 1/2 ounce of this, just enough to sweeten it a little bit. You don't want too much or then it really becomes a sugary drink, and that's not the point. So once you have those 3 ingredients in there, just kind of mix one. Keep this front and center here. Give this a little stir and make sure they all blend nicely. My nice spoon here. I can already smell how refreshing that's going to be. And then essentially, you're just going to top it with club soda. There we go. Refreshing fizz there. You can garnish with an orange slice. Generally, I find if you're using lemon as the base, a lemon wheel is even better. So I cut a lemon wheel here. And of course, to give it a little more aesthetic flair and just a bit of taste, I'm going to drop one of these cocktail cherries. camera cut out on me a little bit there. But I've dropped a cocktail cherry in there. It's not sitting on the top, but really quite a simple drink to make. Very refreshing, very easy. And now without further ado, yeah, you could put a few of those back on a hot sunny day, no problem. You might wake up on the lawn though, so be careful on how strong you make them and how easy they go down. Until next time though, guys, remember, dare to be different and create cool shit. We'll see you on the music part of the video podcast. All right, so here we are. We've got ourselves a John Collins in hand, and man, is that not delicious, refreshing, tart. Really taste the bourbon though still. It's a wonderful concoction. I've had Tom Collins before, and I'm kind of like, all right, this is okay for a gin drink, but the John Collins, whew, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So let's get to the music though, shall we? Ghost in a Bottle, what probably should have been the single on the album, if I could pick one having all the recordings at the same time. Of course, that's not how it worked. When we went to the studio, we had 2 songs done, and then we had to go back and do the rest of the album thanks to lockdowns. But if we would have had all the songs and the musical direction and everything figured out at the time we started making this band, looking back, I think I would pick Ghost in a Bottle to be the single. And so far, it seems that most people who have sent me comments would agree. It has by far been one of the more popular tunes, as personal favorites for fans that have messaged me. And I've noticed that it's probably our most popular t-shirt and art design as well. The green really pops. The art concept, which I'll talk about a little bit in this episode, as well, the music itself, because this is a music podcast. But it is a visual music podcast. So I'll talk a little bit about the artwork as well. But let's start with the song, the real meat. As you might guess, Ghost in a Bottle. It's like, okay, well, I don't really need to think too much about that. It's not a genie, it's a ghost. There's something going on about somebody dying in there. As you know, Stone Cold Crows is a dark project. And lyrically, this is one of the more dark songs that I think people could actually relate to. And I'll tell you why. So, lyrically, the song, when I wrote it, this was, better part of 10 years ago, and I was going through a period in my life where, when I was 19 years old, I lost a few people really close to me, all kind of at once. My then would-be stepdad had passed away suddenly. He was a really healthy guy, and out of nowhere, took a turn for the worse, and then he was gone. And just as I was sort of getting settled with that, and how it kind of disrupted life at home for everybody, my best friend drowned while we were at a cottage, and I did not deal very well with it. It was just one of those times in my life where I turned to alcohol as a pain medication. I mean, alcohol, when you're 19 is usually something you do. You go out and you have fun with your friends, but I turned to it as a bit of a crutch because I was feeling very, very not right, and I didn't know how to stop drinking to just try and make things go away for a little while. And I remember one time, and this was probably when I realized that I needed to turn some things around, when I had a bottle of vodka next to my bed, and I woke up and I just chugged a bunch of it till I passed back out so I didn't have to be awake for a while. And, I talked to a few people that had been doing the same thing. There was a lot that went wrong in my social circle's life all at once, and we were all in very strange, dark places. But I just remember thinking, like, hey, I know this is going to end poorly if I keep doing this. And so I decided to stop. I mean, obviously, my relationship with alcohol is still here. I didn't go completely sober or anything. But recognizing the dark path that you can go on if you turn to substance abuse as a way of dealing with real life. It's one I've actually seen some other friends of mine not get out of that hole, and it's a terrible thing to watch to anyone, and it's really easy. But I remember exactly the feeling of, walking into darkness, and that's kind of what the song was about. And when I was working for Brock University, when I actually wrote the song, because I didn't write the song when all this stuff had happened, I wrote it years later, I was asked to take part in a mental health and substance awareness course to help any students on campus that you might have recognized going into that stuff. And it was a way for me to get out of the office, so I said, sure, I'll do it. And of course, while I'm at this course, the psychologist who was sort of teaching how to recognize patterns, they had done this program where they had people suffering through substance abuse or other mental disorders. They had them draw what it felt like, what they personally felt it was like. And for alcoholism, the person had drawn just this like shaded pencil drawing of a shadowy figure just chained to the bottom of a bottle inside, and you could just see that they could only tread water for so long before they inevitably got tired and drowned. And it really moved me as an emotion that I feel like I'd felt once before, and I wrote this song lyrically based off of that piece of artwork. So if you get into the lyrics, like a ship inside a bottle is one of those weird things. Like, I know how they're built, but if you think actually the only way the ship is ever going to get out of that bottle is if you destroy it. And I feel like that could be the feeling that somebody who has substance abuse feels like there is no way out of that bottle unless you destroy yourself. And that's inevitably what happens. So yeah, I won't go lyrically line by line. You can literally look at all of them, and they pretty much relate to that sinking feeling of, you're doing something wrong, but you do it anyway, and until eventually you don't. So yes, dark lyrics, but that's what music is for. I think it's a powerful thing that when you take that darkness and those ugly feelings and turn them into something like this song, which is upbeat. It's like one of the most groovy, catchy songs I think on the whole album. But that's something about music that it's like, for me, it's very cathartic. I just take that darkness outside of myself and I put it into something else that I'm very proud of. And so that's kind of weird that it became the upbeat song, but that's how music works. So musically, talking about this song, it's weird how some of these come together, because I pieced it together from riffs and ideas that I'd had from other songs and things that just never worked out. Like that guitar riff that started the whole song was in the bridge, the one where Bryson, he sings lead vocals over top of that. And I remember coming up with that riff when I was living in St. Catharines, and I was driving to Hamilton to jam with an old friend to see if I could get something going. And while nothing ever came out of it, I remember coming up with that riff and being like, okay, well, I got to use that. And the rest of the song just kind of built around it. I was listening to a lot of In Flames at the time, and I really liked the way they used layered guitar harmonies underneath the vocals, which is something that other bands don't do that as often. And I thought that was really neat to have these intricate guitar lines, but behind the vocals, which are kind of what everybody usually listens to. So I wanted to do something like that, and that's what we did in the chorus. Now, going back to what I was saying earlier, the song was originally written for a different project, and it was. And that project, Ghostlight Tragedy, was written to be kind of theatrical like Stone Cold Crows is, but it was going to have a female singer. So as a result, when we were doing this song in the studio, I would sing it in a lower register at first, and it just wasn't working. And so I went up to the higher register, and we actually ended up tuning the guitars down a little bit to thicken the lower end, but also just to allow my voice to properly hit the notes, because it was written for female vocals, and naturally they have higher voices. So that's a little tidbit of fun fact. We tuned the guitars, and we actually changed the tuning on a lot of songs throughout this album. There's no just like standard, here you go, like this song's tuned that way, this song's tuned that way. But Ghost was the one that we said, man, the voice sounds good there, but to make it a little more comfortable, we decided to drop the guitars a little. So the other thing that's fun about that is that there's a double narrative in this song. The pre-chorus, where Bryson takes lead vocals, it's actually like almost like another person speaking to the mindset of the addict. You know, can the world forgive the fool? You're swimming in a toxic pool, kind of. It's like the outer forces looking at this person, just being like, come on, man, like, what are you doing? Almost like a word of caution. And then the narrative jumps back to my voice, where it's like the afflicted person themselves. So I always thought that was kind of cool. And it was great because Bryson has a great voice too, and I hope that in the future with Stone Cold Crows we can go and use that a little more often. Not a lot of bands have multiple vocalists, and he's got a great range, and actually I think our voices complement each other fairly well. So in the future, look for more of that kind of stuff. What else can I say, really? The guitar solo is one. It's the same guitar solo I've been playing since I wrote the song. Like, it's one of those times where you just have a guitar solo and it's like, yep, that's good. I like the way it's done, and I can memorize it. I always thought that was the key to being what I consider a good guitar player. You've got these guys out there that can shred for days, but if it's all just a bunch of gargle and noodling around and it's all fast and there's no melody, then it's not the same as like an iconic guitar solo that people can actually hum. Ozzy Osbourne's guitar players have been great at doing that, but they're also technically very proficient, and me being a huge Ozzy fan, that's where I get it. And Iron Maiden too, and actually the first opening notes on that solo were inspired by, I'm pretty sure, Adrian Smith's guitar solo in the song Die With Your Boots On. I just really like those bends as a way to like kickstart a upbeat guitar solo. Otherwise, the bass guitar, which I didn't have written going into the studio. Most other songs had parts written and sort of ready to go and play with, but because that was a demo from the Ghostlight Tragedy days, I didn't own a bass guitar, so I didn't write bass for it. So as a result, when we did that song, and it was the last song we did recorded for the album, I just kind of came up with the bass part on the fly, and it ended up being pretty groovy and was one of my most fun parts to play on the entire album. So that's kind of cool. Otherwise, limited strings and horns. Like, that song's more of a single straight up rocker, so it doesn't have that same cinematic feel that the rest of the album does at times, but we tried to pepper it in here and there. But if a song doesn't need it, you don't put it in. Like, for example, that horn part that builds up in the right before the solo, like that, well, there's not a lot of cinematic stuff going on in this song. That really reminds me of like a Final Fantasy video game soundtrack, like a battle theme or something. It's just very triumphant, and it goes with the upbeat song, and I really dig that. But we didn't really feel the need to put too much more in there because the song was just such a straight up rocker. The last thing I should say, you could probably figure it out based on looking at the artwork and the concept of the song and knowing what it's about now. But like the idea of just having this person or these souls trapped in a bottle, the idea came from like necromancy and some, like, weirdly enough, The Little Mermaid, the Disney movie, where she had like captured these people and kept them in this weird collection. It was just like the idea of the crow characters or whatever performing this evil ritual of ensnaring people's souls lost to, well, in this case, lost to the darkness of substance abuse. But it was kind of cool. And then the t-shirt design, we kind of got like a Jekyll and Hyde thing going on almost, and I really like it, and it's been the most popular design we've released so far, so I think that one's going to be a keeper in the long run. But there you have it, guys. That is what you need to know about the song Ghost in a Bottle, a personal favorite of mine that I'm really glad got to see the light of day professionally and done the way it should have been. So next week we're going to talk a little bit about a few other things. We'll keep going with the music, but there's a few other things coming up. Black Friday's coming up, so I want to talk a little bit about our merchandise and a few other things in the works. But you heard it here first, folks, straight from the crow's mouth. I'm your host, as always, Mitch Cumming. And remember, dare to be different, create cool shit. We will see you next week. Cheers.